and a writer who was before writing a photographer, a professional photographer, Douglas Turtle, wrote a book that any listener might download because it has been out of print since for a long time. The book is the name of the book. The title of the book is Fraud, Famine, and Fascism: The Ukrainian Genocide Myth from Hitler to Harvard. And it has been written in 1987. You have the physical proof that no photo has been taken in 1933. And it was like that in 1987. It's still like that. And when I said to the journalist I spoke of that it's a problem because every people making a paper on the Ukrainian famine, mostly when is the famine is said to be a Stalinian genocide, are that kind of photos, or it's impossible to hide. This kind of things. You know, it was forbidden to photograph Jewish slaughter. It was absolutely forbidden. We have millions of photos. There is no event, even strictly forbidden for photographer. There is no event in the 20th century that has not been photographed.
All right, the story of the famine...
It's a problem. The myth of genocide cannot settle, you know. And I show the listener may read on my website, of course in French, but they may read the 60 pages of text and critics I've published on this thing, and we must explain why the famine campaigns began just when the food shortage stopped. There was no famine in 34, 35, 36. It was over, you know, and that's the problem of the political campaign. The political campaigns are all linked to the more general question of Ukraine.
Okay, hold that thought. We'll be back in 1 second after the pause. Annie Lacroix, French historian on Ukraine in the 1930s. We're going to bring it up to the present time to some extent. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We're continuing our conversation with Annie Lacroix, French historian. So what we've come to now is that the deliberate famine in Ukraine is a myth, and it stretches from Hitler to Harvard. I would just like to ask one more question about this. You mentioned Germany, Poland, the Vatican. I think you've also written about fascist Italy being a part of this. But how about the William Randolph Hearst Press here in the United States?
Yes. William Randolph Hearst was one of the leaders of this campaign, because this campaign was very hard in the United States and Canada mostly, and as almost as much as in Germany and its allies. Of course, and what is most important is that campaign soared every time Ukraine was a terrible stake in international questions. That is very often in the 30s, in the 40s, of course, during the Second World War, after the war, in the Reagan years, it terribly soared in the 80s, and that's why Douglas Total was interested in the question. And as you know, when the United States these last years began to wanted to have a definite grip on Ukraine with the Orange Revolution and so on, the campaign soared anew. And I think many people don't know the aspect of the campaign. You know, when I was attacked in these last years, because I had published these diplomatic papers, I was attacked by Ukrainian associations, which had a leader. The leader was the Ukrainian World Congress in Washington. Right. And this Congress, who had an official protection, led by Ashkold Lozinski, led a terrible campaign, not only an anti-Soviet campaign, but as in the situation of nowadays, the last month situation, with anti-Semitic arguments, you know, in 2002, he wrote to the New York Times, to the magazine New York Times, this letter. It dates back to July 18, 2002. And he replied to a reader who had sent to the New York Times a letter about the myth of the genocide, of the Stalinian genocide, and that's what he wrote. Dear editor, reading what happened to Uncle Smil by a Jewish reader who talk about the terrible anti-Semitism in Ukraine, and mostly in Western Ukraine, which was not Soviet during the interwar, which was Polish at that time, you know, because Ukraine was severed, and a big part of it, the western part of it, went to Poland.
And this is the famous city of Lvov. So Lvov was Poland.
Yes, the western part, what has been called the Curzon line, right, which was the ethnic limit was not respected in the 20s. And with the protection of France, Poland, which was the leader of what was called cordon sanitaire, took a big part of Ukraine. And I come back to Lozinski. He says, I was struck in particular by Daniel Mendelssohn's statement that thanks to the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, the Soviets took over Western Ukraine in 1939, and the Jews there had 2 years of relative security. And that's what Lozinski replies. I only quote, the Soviet occupation of Western Ukraine, that is Polish Ukraine, in 1939, brought about the arrest and internment of tens of thousands of Ukrainians accused of patriotic activity. These Ukrainians were mostly Bandera Ukrainians, or the inheritors of the pogromists of the 20s.
Right.
When the Soviets, you will see the anti-Semitism of the writing. When the Soviets were forced to retreat from the invading Nazis in June 1941, they slaughtered their prisoners. That this was accomplished with the assistance of local communists, primarily of Jewish ethnicity, and so on and so on. All the rest of the letter is a slander against Bolsheviks who are Jewish, and the myth of a slaughter made by the Jews. Norman Davis, that is what we call in France revisionist historians, but in France the term revisionist is very negative. It's not the same meaning as in French, It mostly means negationist.
Holocaust denial, in other words.
Yes, who denied the existence of the ways of slaughtering Jews. Norman David, the renowned British historian, has concluded that no nation lost more people in the 20th century than the Ukrainian, to a large degree. This was a result of both communist and Nazi activity in Ukraine. The Russian and the Germans were savage, but the Jews were the worst. They betrayed their neighbors and did it with such zeal. It's a pure lie, as you know.
And so what I think the general lesson is that we're seeing a return of Nazism and fascism under NATO, U.S.
Yes.
Auspices, and these are some of the things that they bring forward.
Yes, it's the same kind of campaign we see today. The slaughtered are accused.
The victim is blamed. The victim is blamed. We're going to be back in a minute. 1 minute, and we'll be back for our final segment on World Crisis Radio.